Senator Tim Scott officially announcing his entry into the 2024 Republican primary contest. He joins the field with a not insignificant amount of cash and with a conservative message, you just heard it, centered on hope and faith and opportunity. Let's get straight to CNN's Eva McKen. She is right there in North Charleston for us. An upbeat speech from Senator Scott. Eva, a great crowd behind him cheering him on. Now the challenge. He's been testing the waters for months. Now that he is officially in, can he climb from the bottom of the pack to the top?
That's right, John. It will be a challenge indeed, though hard to tell from the excitement from his supporters in this room. At times, it really felt like a church service, but really it was a speech in two parts. You know, he began talking about his personal biography, the son of a single mother, bringing his mother up on stage at one point to give her flowers, and saying that his life disproves the argument of the left, that America is a country of optimism and opportunity, not oppression. And then the second part of the speech, John, really was an indictment of President Biden. He not so much focused on his Republican rivals, but really seemed to want to have his eyes towards a general election. Take a listen to his early pitch to voters.
Joe Biden and the radical left are attacking every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb. And that's why I'm announcing today that I'm running for president of the United States of America.
So there you get a sense of how he plans to run this race, really focusing on his personal biography, inspiration, and reticent to do a lot of mudslinging when it comes to his fellow Republican rivals. No real references to the former president or Governor DeSantis. I think the closest he got to that was when he said grievance over greatness, John.
Eva McKen for us. Eva, that's not easy to do, standing there doing a live report in a very loud room. Appreciate your perspective being there on Tim Scott's announcement day. We'll see you next up on the trail. Let's bring the conversation in studio with me to share their reporting and their insights. CNN's Manu Raju, Catherine Lucy of the Wall Street Journal, and NPR's Aisha Rasco. An interesting moment. He's been testing the waters for a couple of months. You just heard right there, just listening to Senator Scott, the Republican frontrunner, the faraway frontrunner is Donald Trump. That is Z to Trump's A. That is optimistic, that is upbeat, it's conservatism, but as Senator Scott noted at the end, he wants to have a compassionate conservatism. The question is, does that Republican Party still exist? That's the test.
I don't think it really does. I think that was a great speech for 1996. I don't know that that speaks to 2023. And I do think that it's very interesting. And he's doing what the other Republican candidates, other than Trump, have been doing, is they're focusing on the left and all these things. But their path to getting the nomination goes through Trump. And until you go through him, and until we really see what that looks like, I don't know what is the path. You have to go through Trump to get there.
And he has avoided for some time going after Trump. Really, he's been asked to this in interviews. He doesn't talk to reporters in the Capitol anymore. He will go on some other stations, get interviewed, and when he's asked about Donald Trump, he sidestepped the question there. He did make those subtle reference to not being part of victimhood politics, not being part of grievance politics. That will be his distinction. But how hard will he go after him? He does have a lot of establishment support. Senator John Thune, the #2 Senate Republican, coming out in behind him. Other Senate Republicans that I've talked to believe that he is their candidate. And he'll have a ton of money. But does that translate in Iowa, New Hampshire, with the Republican base, the Trump-loving base? That's going to be the big question.
That's a great point in the sense that Senator Scott is a safe landing spot because his colleagues like him, love him, think he's a powerful messenger for conservative values. So they can stay with him and not be with Trump. The question is in Iowa, in New Hampshire, in his home state of South Carolina, where the former governor, Nikki Haley, also will be a candidate. So Scott's big bet is, you're right, he just barely touched on Trump. He said greatness, not grievances. That's a reference to Trump under the table. Is that his biography? Is that people look at his biography and say, wait a minute, let's do something different?
So my grandfather said to me, son, you can be bitter or you can be better, but you can't be both. You see, he chose patriotism over pity. He focused on the windshield of his life and not on the rearview mirror. And today, I'm living proof that America is the land of opportunity and not a land of oppression.
The challenge for anybody, but especially somebody like Senator Scott, who's well known here in Washington, lesser known out there, you got to break through early somewhere. If you're going to knock off a front runner, you got to do it early. You have to make a statement early somewhere. Not necessarily win, but come in really close in an Iowa or New Hampshire. Can that sell?
I think in Iowa, and John, you and I know Iowa really well, I think that is a powerful message. It's a powerful personal story. He is heavily leaning on faith, personal responsibility. You heard a lot of sort of call and response stuff with that audience. It really had a religious tone. So I do think it lands, but the problem also with Iowa is that they're viewing a big list of candidates, a big field, and those are early voters who like to kick the tires on everybody. They like to meet everybody. They like to see everyone. And they often, when you talk to them, they're like, I have my top 3, I have my top 4. And so he could just end up in a lot of people's top tier and not necessarily be their number 1.
And if the longer that goes on, that you're second or third to Trump, we saw this in 2016, that helps Trump. And so Scott in today, we're going to spend most of the rest of this conversation on him. DeSantis gets in midweek. Chris Christie allegedly is supposed to get in this week as well. You have a couple others who are waiting there to jump in, and you see on the far left of your screen there the candidates who are already in. That benefits Trump, unless and until a single alternative emerges and the others get out, which is hard in the ego-driven. I'm not saying this to be critical. It's just hard. It's your ego. You've raised all this money. You're finally in the race. It's hard to get out. If you listen to Senator Scott, though, what's interesting is that he is optimistic. He is upbeat. He's a great communicator, as you could see right there. He delivers a pretty strong conservative message. He just does it with a smile. He says Joe Biden is weak. He will stand up to China and win the economic Cold War. He talked about sending American troops in to fight the cartels. That they'll take note of that in Mexico, a sovereign nation to the south. This is not it's actually probably a more conservative message than you will hear from Donald Trump, who's not really about ideology.
Yeah, and that's what he's going to have to try to convince voters of, that make this not a necessarily a personality contest, although his personality will drive a lot of it, given his background is unique, but about the focus on what he would do as president, his agenda, and his policy. The challenge for him, though, is that there are all these other candidates who will divide up the anti-Trump vote. And people like Ron DeSantis, who want to make this Trump versus DeSantis contest, are going to have a challenge when people like Tim Scott are in this race, and that's going to be the real problem for the anti-Trump lane.
And we saw this in 2016, this big field of candidates and this conversation around, well, do we need to get some people out so there's one clear alternative to Trump? But no one ever wants to get out. And so the longer they all stay in, fighting it out for second and third place, it benefits Trump.
All right, so that's a conversation that happens a couple months down the road. Maybe it happens right before Iowa, maybe it happens right after Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. But to the point now, he has a decent amount of money left over in his Senate fund. He has a good network. The fact that many of his Senate colleagues will support him means there'll be money. There will be money for Tim Scott. The question is where and when is the opportunity to break through? You got to take out. Trump has said he might not even join the first debate, so he might not be there on the stage. Yeah. So Scott's debate first might be against DeSantis and some of the others before he gets to Trump to try to be the top tier alternative.
And that's where he really has to differentiate himself, right? So he's saying that he doesn't want to get as bogged down in the culture wars. He just want to say America is great. He did a little bit of the no CRTs, more ABCs. So he's getting into that a little bit. But the question for me is, like, how does he make himself stand out? Yes, he is a conservative, but there are lots of other conservatives who are also running. So what is it that, other than your biography and your personality, which matters, but I don't know that we are at a point where people are really voting for sunny personalities. Like, is that what the voters want? It seems like they've wanted a lot of meanness lately. Like, let's be real. So is he representative? He's representative of what people say they want, but when they're voting in a totally different way.
But it's a fantastic point in the sense that Trump has remade the Republican Party in some ways. And so if you're Senator Scott or if you're Governor Haley or if you're Governor Christie, you're actually asking people maybe who have left the party or who don't vote in primaries to sort of come back in and get involved in the primaries. And just to that point, as we head to break here, Donald Trump doesn't say much nice about Ron DeSantis. He did just compliment Senator Scott for getting into the race. Good luck to Senator Tim Scott in entering the Republican presidential primary. Back to the point about who Trump is, it is rapidly loading up with lots of people. And Tim is a big step up from Ron DeSanctimonious. There you go there. So, Senator Scott tries to be optimistic and says, I'll compete against my rivals with a smile. Donald Trump says, thank you to one, congratulations to one, and attacks another. That is the race Senator Scott has just entered.